Cognitive research has shown that there are two modes or kinds of thinking, and in this video I'm going to show you not only how smart people in the past use these to their advantage, but also teach you how to do it too, so that way you'll be able to become more productive and power your creative pursuits. Let's get into it. Quick, what's 9 plus 10? If you answered, you probably answered one of two things. You either said 19 or 21. So that one was pretty easy, that was pretty doable. Now make me a painting that illustrates the meaning of life. That would probably require a lot more time and contemplation. Your process for doing both of these things is completely unique. When you're answering a math question, you're calling upon specific information from your memory, and when you're making these sorts of calculations, you're pulling from what you already know. So how does what I asked you relate to the two modes of thinking? The first way your brain processes information is the focused mode, and that's when you're just at work on a task and your brain is just concentrated on that task. And the second mode, which we'll talk about later, is called the diffuse mode, and that's when you're just chilling out, enjoying life type of deal. And we can even look to history to find examples of the diffuse mode at work. This is Salvador Dali. You may know him because he painted stuff like this. This is Thomas Edison. You may know him for inventing this. Dali and Edison used this one technique to power their creative work, and today I'm going to teach you that technique. So when your brain is following steps that it's familiar with, that's the focus mode. It's something that it can recall from memory, it's much more detail oriented, and it's concentrating your focus on a task. And researchers found that the prefrontal cortex is active when you are in the focus mode. This isn't necessarily the same activation as you would see in the diffuse mode. The second thinking mode is the diffuse mode of thinking, and that's when you're not really concentrating your focus on anything at all. You're just relaxed. The diffuse mode is something that's not super commonly talked about, but it can be something that can help you unlock your creativity and become even more productive. For example, good old Salvador, his process is quite remarkable, and yet it's pretty simple. To come up with this insane paintings like this and this and this and this, he'd start with this. Yes, a chair. He'd kick back and relax in a chair. No, it's not for procrastinating, it's for creative work, I promise. And while he sat back in his chair relaxing, he'd let his mind wander. He'd keep a general focus on the things that he was working on just a little bit earlier. He'd have a key in his hand, holding it above the floor, and when he would drift off to sleep, his fingers would let go of the key. And once the key hit the ground, the sound of that key would wake him up, and when he was awake, he could now take the ideas that he'd been working on and pull from all his diffuse thoughts that he was gathering into his workspace when he was in the focus mode and awake. And so those diffuse connections were used to inspire his artworks directly. And that's why when you look at a Dali painting, you can notice this dreamy, sort of bizarre quality. And with these threads that he gathered from the diffuse mode, Dali could weave those threads into something beautiful. But this technique isn't just limited to creating bizarre paintings or artworks. Thomas Edison was a prolific inventor. What Thomas Edison would do was he would sit back in a chair and hold a bunch of ball bearings in his hand. And while he's sitting back and relaxing, vaguely thinking about whatever problem or idea that he had in mind, just before he would fall asleep, he'd be making all these diffuse mode connections between the different ideas that he's had. But as soon as he falls asleep, his hand, which is holding all these metal ball bearings, lets go. So he's not using a key like Dali, he's using ball bearings, but the effect is still the same. He would wake up from the clattering noise of those ball bearings, and he could take whatever insights and whatever connections he made in the diffuse mode and bring it into something that he could build into reality. And so that's why the diffuse mode is so powerful. As you can see, Salvador Dali and Thomas Edison were both people in different professions, and they were both able to utilize the diffuse mode to their advantage and really unlock their creative thinking and become more productive. And so that begs the question, what's really going on in your brain when you are in the diffuse mode? What makes it this magical place for all these connections to happen? And to understand the diffuse mode, you need to understand that our brains cycle through different brainwave states. Right now you're in beta, you're awake, hopefully. When you're asleep, that's delta. In between beta and delta, there are two really important states. There's alpha and there's theta. Theta is the zone that's associated with creative insights, and so that's your creativity. When Dali and Edison were working and they would go back to relax and go enter that diffuse mode, they would be working to get into that theta state. And theta is just before they fall asleep and hit delta. So when Edison and Dali went to do their diffuse mode thinking, they'd float right above the edge of sleep. When whatever they were holding dropped from their hands and hit the ground making a loud noise, they would be dropped from theta to the alpha state. And so with that technique that they used, they wanted to avoid going into deep sleep or the delta state. And that alpha state between the beta and theta states is also referred to as relaxed awareness. And it's called relaxed awareness because that's the state where you're able to retain the most info and learn new things. So what mode of thinking is the best kind? Well, it's both of them. Let me explain. When you try to learn something new, your mind needs both thinking modes to truly solidify the information. It's like working out. You don't go to the gym one day and then come out looking like a Greek god. It's just not possible. It takes a lot of time between working out and also giving your muscles a break and then returning and cycling through that process until eventually you're looking pretty buff. And that rest period is crucial for growth. You don't want to be on your focus mode 24/7. Your neural connections are like this too, because by alternating between focused and relaxed, you're able to form the connections that really stick. And your brain can only be in one mode at a time. You can't be in the focus mode and diffuse mode simultaneously. And so what may be optimal for you is to find a balance between focus and diffuse so that you can truly get the most out of your time. But now that you know all of that, how can you use this in your own daily life to get smarter? One way to get your brain into the diffuse mode is to sleep. When you're sleeping, your mind organizes and consolidates the information that you've picked up throughout the day. And while Dali and Edison both chose to not go into deep sleep, sleep still is a pretty restorative process that allows you to consolidate information. Some of that information that you may need will be easily recallable later because of that work that's being done as you sleep. How thoughtful is that? Another way to switch into the diffuse mode is to consciously just take your attention off of what you're working on. Switch your attention to something else like journaling or meditating or going out for a walk. All those things don't require a lot of intellectual power. Sometimes we have really good ideas when we're in the shower, and that's basically why. You're in the diffuse mode and you're able to relax and make all these connections, and that's how you generate new ideas. You may think it's a waste of time, but trust me, it works. Try it out yourself and let me know how it goes in the comments. And hopefully by now you're a little bit more aware of what's going on in your brain and how you can use that to your advantage to become more productive and more creative. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.